Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are excited to delve into the topic of unlocking the power of content audits. Let's explore how content audits can transform your digital strategy and drive success. Before we get started, let's do some introductions. My name is Mike Dumka. I'm a digital workplace consultant here at Habanero with a focus on supporting intranets, enterprise content management, and digital collaboration technologies. And my partner in crime for today is Chris Lucier.
Thank you, Mike. I'm Chris Lucier, a digital workplace consultant. I've been with Habanero a little over 3 years. In that time, I've helped to shape and build our AI knowledge, provide M365 training to clients, and I've worked on document management and SharePoint migration projects in the energy, financial, and government sectors.
Now, for a little bit of housekeeping, our webinar will be roughly 20 to 25 minutes in duration and will not have a live Q&A. Please feel free to leave questions in the chat and we'll follow up with you after the event. Also, concepts that we'll be covering today can be applied to any digital platform, but our examples may mention tools and technologies related to Microsoft environments. If these don't line up perfectly with you and what you are trying to do, please reach out and let us know. If you're hitting a wall somewhere, odds are we've hit that very same wall and we can help you get around it. Anyways, moving on. For those of you that aren't familiar with Habanero, we're passionate about humanizing the world of work. We do this by helping organizations create intentional workplace cultures, build community and connection with employees, and finally, deliver digital experiences that are worthy of your brand. As I stated at the beginning, we have been partnering with internal communicators for the last 20 years to design and build award-winning intranets. We've taken all that knowledge and expertise and packaged it into an internet product for Microsoft SharePoint Online called Go, which ties nicely into the subject we'll be covering today. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Today, we'll take you on a journey through the world of content audits, a crucial yet often overlooked aspect of digital strategy. At Habanero, we've learned a lot about content audits, and we're excited to share that with you. Now, imagine a library where books are scattered randomly. There's no catalog or organization, and some of those books reference other books. You need the information that they contain, and you might even know the exact name of the book you need, but as you can imagine, finding that book would be a nightmare. This is what happens when our digital content is not audited and organized. Now, with that scenario in mind, we're going to share with you why content audits are important, our approach to content audits, a walkthrough of one of our templates and how it gets used, and we'll also share some insights and lessons that we've learned along the way. I'm going to send things back over to Mike to start things off with why content audits are important.
Thanks, Chris. So let's start with the importance of content audits. So, what exactly is a content audit? It's basically a thorough check of all of the stuff on your website or intranet. It helps you figure out what content you have, how good it is, and if it matches your business goals. So, why are content audits important? Well, having great content is key to making any digital platform successful. When you're planning a new website or improving an existing one, it's super important to have a strategy and clear process to make sure that your platform is filled with useful and easy to use content. Now let's look at our approach to running a successful content audit. At Habanero, we follow a structured approach to content audits. We'll explore each activity in detail over the next several slides, but here's a quick overview for now. We start by identifying and collecting information for our content inventory. Then we gather any analytics available related to that inventory. After those big jobs are done, we will identify the key stakeholders for all of the information we just collected. Then for the hardest part, actually building our audit spreadsheet. Once that's done, we assign different stakeholders to different sections of the audit. And then finally, the fun stuff begins and we get to run our audit. But after looking at this, the typical question is, how long will this take? Well, it really depends on the amount of content we're dealing with. For smaller projects, it might just take a week or two, but for the bigger ones, it can stretch out to a few months. That's why every audit needs a tailored approach to help you hit your goals. Now that we know what our process looks like, let's get into the nitty-gritty of each activity. Let's start with the content inventory. A content inventory provides a detailed list of all the content you want to review, with a focus on gathering the format of your content, where that content lives, is there any metadata available for your content, what security or permissions have been applied to the content, and finally, is there any analytics available for the content. It lets you assess both your content qualitatively and quantitatively, laying the foundation for strategic content management and making sure everything aligns with your business goals. Plus, it's important to include details about permissions and security to keep sensitive information safe and accessible to only the right people. Now, there are several ways to run this activity. Most organizations we work with start by building their inventories running PowerShell. For those of you that don't know, PowerShell is a tool from Microsoft that helps automate tasks and manage configurations. You can use it in pretty much any business setting. If hearing this scares you a little, don't worry. Our friends in IT should be very familiar with running this tool and getting the information you need. If you have access to more advanced tools like AvePoint or ShareGate, it gets even better. But whatever tool you run, most of you will need support from IT. So get them involved early and maybe even send a coffee or two their way. Next is ensuring we have some solid content analytics. Content analytics help you get to know your audience by tracking what they're interested in and how they engage with it. It gives you insights to help improve your content, allowing you to make smart, data-driven decisions to fine-tune your strategy. Some analytic examples that we would be looking for include when the content was created, last modified, last accessed, and hopefully the number of views. With that done, Chris, back over to you.
Thank you. Now that you've got an inventory and some analytics, it's time to start looking at the stakeholders. Identifying key stakeholders during a content audit ensures comprehensive input from all relevant parties. This facilitates buy-in and support for the audit's findings and recommendations. It also enhances communication and collaboration, aligns the audit with business goals, and supports well-informed decision-making. Now it's time to build our audit spreadsheet. We start with a comprehensive content inventory and use content analytics to understand audience behavior and optimize our strategy. We track progress, evaluate content against assessment criteria, and outline actions and effort required to ensure a thorough and effective content audit. Finally, we'll show you a demo in a little bit to illustrate how this process works in practice. Now that we have all this information to work with, it's time to start figuring out who's going to do what. Assigning people to review content as part of a content audit is essential for ensuring a thorough and accurate evaluation. By involving a cross-functional team, including content creators and subject matter experts, you can gather a diverse perspective and expertise. This collaborative approach helps identify areas for improvement and ensures content aligns with business goals. It also maintains high quality standards. All that's left now is to start your content audit. Now Mike is going to take us through the inventory component of our content audit spreadsheet. Over to you, Mike.
During this demo, we'll walk you through how we at Habanero would build and use a spreadsheet like this. And hopefully by the end, you'll have a better understanding on how to use this tool for your next project. I'll be covering the first set of columns, which details information about our content inventory, and then Chris will cover the second set of columns detailing what actions need to be taken. The audit spreadsheet we'll be showing you has been built on data from our own intranet here at Habanero called H, but the logic can be applied to any digital platform. With that out of the way, let's get started. Column A contains the URL for each asset in our content inventory. As you can see, the column is not fully expanded because URLs can be so long. We can expand it to see the full URL, but most of the time we'll leave it reduced in size to make the sheet more usable. But again, we can always expand when necessary. Columns B, C, D, and E contain the title for each asset in our inventory. For some projects, we find it easier to visualize the content hierarchy. We know that our intranet only goes 4 levels deep when it comes to our information architecture, so this is why we have 4 columns. You could expand this to as many levels as you need for your audit or not use this method at all. While this takes time to produce, we find that displaying the hierarchy improves the usability and scalability of the spreadsheet. Column F contains the content type. We are now getting into the meat of our inventory by categorizing our assets. In our example, we have identified sites, landing pages, content pages, lists, and libraries. One thing we like to do, but depending on the project, is add some icons and color to help with findability. But inventories can be extensive, with thousands of lines and numerous content types. It's safe to say there will be a bunch of squinting and scrolling with any type of audit spreadsheet. By using this column, though, you can filter and isolate specific assets for review. For instance, using filters, one person can focus on landing pages and content pages. See how the spreadsheet has been reduced based on the content type? Now let's look at another where someone might focus on lists and libraries. This is just one example of how we can make our content audits much easier to manage. But to be able to do this, you really need accurate data, which might require some massaging to get right. Now let's remove those filters and move on to the next column. Column G contains the content owners. This section helps us identify who currently owns the content. They may not be the creator or the last author, but they are the individuals who are ultimately responsible for the accuracy of the content. The following columns will detail all possible stakeholders, helping us understand who we may need to consult with, but depending on your content inventory tool and approach, some manual entry might be required to ensure accuracy. For example, say we wanted to find all of the content that James owns. Using our filter, we can see exactly that. Seems James certainly owns a lot of content. Anyhow, let's remove those filters and move on to our next column. Column H contains the individual who can make decisions about this content. They may not be the owner, creator, or even the last author. All of this can make things a little bit confusing. A real-world example might list the VP of marketing as the owner of a large section of content, but they may not be hands-on. That might be the manager of marketing. So, using our example, we would enter the manager of marketing down as someone who can make decisions about the content, not the VP. It's important to identify these stakeholders accurately, which may require manual intervention. Things like role changes, retirements, departures can all lead to outdated decision makers, requiring the identification of new ones. Ensuring this column is accurate is crucial to any content audit. Having good governance also makes this information way easier to find, but that's a conversation for another time. So for this example, using James again, we want to compare all the content he owns versus all of the content where his name is not the decision maker. We would want to validate this and make changes where applicable. This is where we put our detective hat on and might reach out to individuals to ensure we have the right information. Okay, we're done picking on James for now. Let's get rid of these filters. Column I contains last updated. Very simply, this is the date for the last time the content was modified. As we are working with dates, there may be some manual work required to ensure that values are in the correct format and can be filtered. You're not going to use this filter to find individual content items, but rather find content within a certain date range. This would be a great way to find old and outdated content. Stakeholders could then chip in by reviewing the filtered content to see if it's still relevant. Anyways, moving on. Column J contains the last updated by. Like the previous column, this is the individual who last modified the content. We may not need to talk to these individuals as part of the audit, but if we're having trouble identifying the content owner or decision maker, this person would be a good place to start. Column K contains information about custom functionality. Here we want to understand if the page contains any custom functionality, what we may need to maintain, or possibly redevelop. We could use the notes column on the far right to briefly document the details. Column L contains information about permissions. This column documents who can view the content and who can edit the content. This column is very important and may impact changes that you want to make and who may need to be involved. Here we can look for values that don't seem to match what we are typically expecting. Then we put on our detective hat and try and understand what's going on. Typically, this is one of the hardest columns to get right, which again could also have the largest impact. Now we get to column M, the last of my inventory columns, which has page views. If we have any analytics on our content, this column will be useful. It can aid with strategy and decision making by allowing us to prioritize content based on performance or determine if low performing content is even needed. This brings me to the end of my section. Back over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Mike. Let's review the content audit columns of the spreadsheet to identify the responsibilities and required actions. In column N, we have assignment. This column assigns content to individuals for audit. It helps track assignments and monitor progress. Typically, we assign similar content based on type or information architecture. Adding a filter allows quick access to see who's working on what. By filtering on Mike, I can see that he's assigned to a few different items that he's already ahead of the game on, and there's a few things that it looks like he's made a note to himself that he has to review with the employee experience team. So let's put back those filters and take a look at column O, where we have status. This column indicates whether the content review is complete, and the values are labeled with color coding so that we can easily see what's been marked as yes and no. This helps in quickly scanning and filtering the data to determine the status of each content item. By clicking on the filter, we can easily see what's been looked at already and what's still outstanding for a review. And we'll put those columns back before we go on to the next one. Our next column is audience. This column helps identify special groups using the content, assisting us in updating or improving our security model. In column Q, we have up to date. This column will mainly be a manual entry based on the organization's content strategy. Generally speaking, content updated within the last year is considered current, but this value, of course, can change based on your organization's specific content strategy. I'm going to filter this column to see where the no's are so that I can identify what content is currently known to not be up to date and is going to need some work if we intend to keep it on the intranet. In column R, we have still relevant. This column differs from up to date, as you can have up to date content that's no longer relevant, and you can have outdated content that's still relevant but needs some work to get it up to the current standard. So this column helps stakeholders determine if content is still necessary. Content may no longer be needed for a variety of reasons, such as a policy or procedure change, maybe a change in strategy, or even a corporate structure change. Unneeded content should be removed or not migrated from your intranet. Retaining outdated content can lead to a number of things, including increasing business risk with irrelevant information available for decision making, or frustrating your users by cluttering up search results with things that aren't going to work for what they're trying to find. So you'll want to identify what's relevant to help you determine what needs to be kept in your intranet to serve your organization's needs. Our next column is to help us determine if the content item is aligned with current content standards. Individuals assigned to the audit should understand the standards established by their communications team and determine whether the content item complies with them. If it doesn't, this needs to be flagged for an update. So as we move through the spreadsheet, you start to get a sense of what needs to come next. And column T is there to help us detail the action that needs to be taken on the content moving forward. This column provides information on the next steps for updating our digital platform. Common values here include reconfigure for tasks involving SharePoint, rewrite for content updates, and nothing for content that really requires no changes. Some organizations choose to customize these values. For example, you could use combine when multiple pages can be merged into one. So here, I'm going to filter on a couple of different columns, namely up to date and still relevant. I want to know what content isn't up to date and is still relevant. This is going to help me identify what I can quickly assign as rewrite in the action column, as we just need to make some changes to bring it up to date and make sure that it's still relevant and useful for the people that are going to be searching for this content. Now let's reset our filters and hop into our last column. Our last column is notes. This is typically used in combination with the action column, but can also be used with other columns as well. It allows people working in the audit to detail information that they can't include within the other columns. It's also a really easy way to effectively communicate within this spreadsheet with others who may be working here. Now that you have a pretty solid understanding of how we use our content audit spreadsheet, let's go back to Mike, who's going to share with us the key things that we've learned to ensure a content audit success.
Thanks, buddy. So we've gone through the importance of content audits, our approach on how to run them, and finally a little hands-on with the spreadsheet. Now let's wrap it up with some of the key takeaways we've picked up over the years. First up, audits come in many different forms, and it's crucial to understand the desired outcome to set up the appropriate structure and gather the necessary information. Audits can be used to kick off projects, spot content issues, handle organizational changes, or tackle technical stuff like system migrations and storage limits. Each scenario requires a tailored approach to ensure effective results. Once you know the content you want to audit, get IT involved to help you build that inventory and do it as soon as you possibly can. They may use standard Microsoft reports, create PowerShell scripts, or use tools like AvePoint or ShareGate to help you get the details you need. You're going to need their help to interpret the data, so get them involved early and often. Now we start to put our detective hat on. Any content audit should start at the broadest level of organization possible and then delve into more detail as needed. Look at it like starting at the top and working your way down. This approach saves effort for both you and your stakeholders. A good starting point could be identifying sites or content that haven't been updated or accessed recently. You could also establish a base criteria for broad sweeps, like excluding content older than 5 years unless it pertains to a specific area. And while you're working with IT to complete your content inventories, start reaching out to the owners of major content areas as soon as possible to get their support. Clearly communicate what they will be asked to do, the timing, and the commitment required to complete the content audit. Content owners are going to be your best resource to determine if content is up to date, if it's still relevant, or if changes need to be made. Now with that, over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Mike. Those are great points. In addition to what Mike has already shared, remember to make it easy. You'll want to create easy-to-use tools like shared spreadsheets or SharePoint lists to capture decisions made by content owners, since multiple people will likely provide input. Be specific about the details needed, such as the name, location of the content, type, size, content owners, permissions, summary, content hygiene, even analytics. This structured approach ensures that all the necessary information is captured efficiently and you don't have to go back searching for it again later on. Those of you who have already made the move to Modern are probably already aware, but it's important to remember that SharePoint Modern uses a flat hierarchy with each site as its own site collection, whereas in SharePoint Classic, it used a hierarchical structure with nested subsites. So you'll want to plan for this change as it's not one-to-one and can get very complex. You'll also want to find out what your users are currently struggling with on your current intranet and get familiar with web content accessibility guidelines to ensure that your content is accessible to everyone in your new or updated intranet. Over the past year, we've seen AI show up right alongside search in terms of helping users find content. Like search, AI can highlight old, outdated, or irrelevant content from all across your intranet, which can really confuse people. Keeping your intranet content up to date is crucial. A thorough content audit can help identify what to leave behind, especially when you're migrating to a new or upgraded intranet. And using content inventory tools properly allows you to be selective about what content to bring over, improving the search experience and the overall user experience. It's hard work, but it's absolutely worth it. In conclusion, content audits are essential for maintaining a high-quality digital platform. By following a structured approach and learning from our experiences, we can ensure that our content is organized, relevant, and aligned with our business goals. Next, make a plan for your content audit. By taking steps to understand your needs and goals for the audit, you can ensure a better search and user experience for your organization. Select the right tools. Whether you work with IT to build a custom script or you leverage third-party tools like ShareGate, you'll want to be sure that the tools you use will give you the information that you need to be able to make informed decisions. And get teams involved early. Establish clear goals to keep everyone moving in the same direction. Consider the future. Your next intranet upgrade may come with enhanced search capabilities or even use AI to assist users in finding the information that they need to do their work. Removing unnecessary content from your intranet will improve the time it takes for people to find what they're looking for, not to mention avoiding the frustrations that come from a subpar search experience. We'd like to encourage all of you to take a closer look at your digital content and consider conducting a content audit. It's a powerful tool that can transform your digital presence and improve your user experience. If you need any assistance or guidance, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can be reached at our Habanero emails, shown here, or also on LinkedIn. Thank you all for watching, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again.